Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Triple P, the Pats Pro podcast. I'm your host, Pats Pro, and as you know, sometimes I'm Freakout Pro, or Doomer Pro, as some on the old X machine have decided to label me, but we persevere, and I must start this podcast with an apology. Sometimes life's, and you can't avoid it. Having said that, the Pats Pro podcast is back. Now, I cannot promise as of right now that it will be out on a weekly basis, but I figured the NFL free agency legal tampering period was the best time to come back, give my thoughts, and get back into the swing of things. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. But we're not going to be talking about the Patriots free agent signings. First, we're going to be talking about the Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens doctors clearly did not like what Max Crosby's knee looked like, in my opinion. I have nothing informed on that. That's just my own speculation. Quite frankly, I think it's crazy that the Ravens are really the only team that consistently does this. You know, even going back to most recently 2018, they did this when they, I forget the player, but they canceled his contract off of a medical thing. So, I don't know what they're doing over there. They spent those 2 first-round picks. Now, I understand they got them back, but they aligned their entire free agent period around having Max Crosby. So, you have to wonder what the plan is there. And I'm just going to say it right now. If Trey Hendrickson ends up signing with the Ravens, there needs to be some collusion investigations, because that just screams like a bad deal, or a deal in bad faith is the best way to put it from the Ravens standpoint. Feels like they got buyer's remorse. Feels like they took a look at Crosby's knee and really, really got scared and decided not to invest the draft capital and the cap capital, you know what I mean, into keeping Max Crosby and acquiring Max Crosby. So we're going to see how that situation unfolds. I just have a feeling that that knee is messed up, and Crosby probably got in his own way and, decided to hold off that meniscus repair a little bit too long because, he felt he was healthy and wanted to, show the Raiders that they were wrong and everything. And I think the Raiders kind of had this dead on, that he needed to be held out of those games, and they were right to do it. They weren't trying to tank. They were legitimately worried about the players' safety and overall health, and I think Crosby's own ego cost him here. So we'll see where that goes. Now, let's go ahead and get on to free agency. As anyone who's been following my X account knows, I have been a bit of a doom and gloom, wet blanket, whatever adjective you can think of to be negative, or that would describe me being negative. And you know what? I don't apologize for it, because quite frankly, it's who I am. I tend to see the downside more than the upside, but I think I've kind of called this kind of dead center, to be completely honest with you, in terms of what the Patriots were actually going to do. Had some tweets just before the free agency period that, if the Pats were to whiff on Pierce, which it looks like that Pierce was never, ever even going to be available for 1 second, considering the fact that at 12:01 p.m. on Monday the 9th, he's on Pat McAfee's show announcing that he signed a deal with Indy, so that feels a little icky, to be honest. It feels like Indy was always going to sign him. He was always going to sign with Indy, and they just made a big spectacle out of it for no reason. Not for no reason, but you know what I mean. But I said if, the Pats were to whiff on Pierce, then they would pivot to Romeo Doubs. And pivot they did. As much as I feel that, Romeo Doubs is a stopgap or something of that nature, because you're not able to, get out of the stare down with the Eagles about A.J. Brown. I truly feel like that trade isn't going to happen, and I feel like Doubs is the move and not a move. And that bothers the hell out of me. I like the player. I really do. I like the player. He's a good red zone target. He's a guy who can separate, move the chains. He can move the chains. and he's essentially a 80% Diggs replacement, because Diggs, for being 33, still had the ability to find the gap in zones and get open when Drake May needed him in the regular season anyways. The postseason is an entirely different animal. But I think Dobbs will be able to give you 70-80% of what Diggs gave you at 80% of the Diggs contract. So I think it's a good deal value-wise, and as Daniel Rotman said, in a vacuum, I like it, but from the 30,000-foot view, I have questions. I don't see the vision, and I am worried that the Patriots are not doing everything they can to maximize Drake May's lack of massive contract, and by the way, it's going to be fucking massive. And I just wish I was a fly on the wall. I can get my little pieces of information from my one and only source, who I've been very open about is, within the craft orbit, so they're not, giving me everything, but, they give me some stuff. I just wish I could be a fly on the wall in the room where they're, talking about the players and the vision for the team, because just traditionally, from a traditional team building standpoint, I don't understand what they're doing as of right now. And yeah, maybe they're waiting for, June 1 in order to be able to trade for A.J. Brown, and then it all makes sense. You have, A.J. Brown is your typical X receiver, your number one, your alpha, yada, yada, yada. You then have Romeo in your Y, and you have Kyle Williams operating out of the slot, which I personally think he is more of a slot player than he is an X receiver. Just with his release package, it makes more sense that he's able to, get off the line quick, or, maybe move around the formation, get off to a running start, maybe have a linebacker covering him, something of that nature. If that's the case, then I'm okay with it, but nothing in this world is a guarantee, certainly not a trade for A.J. Brown, when the Eagles are going to have to deal with a massive cap hit if they don't do it before June 1st. After June 1st, it becomes more manageable, which is why everyone now is saying, oh, it's going to be June, and part of me thinks that it's just a talking point storyline for the networks to talk about. I'm not sure that the Eagles are all that willing to make that trade, and I know the Patriots want to do it, but they're going to do it at their price, and they're not going to overextend themselves a single millimeter, a single iota, a single whatever unit of measurement that is very small. They're not going to overextend themselves. They're going to get A.J. Brown, but it's going to be at their price. And if they're not able to get A.J. Brown at their price, well, they're going to be shit out of luck, and they're going to be going into another season with a bunch of wide receivers 2, 3s, and 4s. And that's not sufficient, in my opinion, and they should be criticized if that's the case. That's just where I stand. I think that, the team has made some solid additions, yes. If they continue to make more additions, then maybe my opinion changes. But if they don't, and this is, the best that it's going to get, obviously they're going to sign more lower level guys, all of the, the major free agent players, sans a few, have already been signed. So it's going to be a lot of kind of what I predicted, a lot of mid to low level free agents, character guys, special teams guys to fill up a roster. And yeah, that's how good teams stay good, is they identify guys, they don't overpay. I get all of that. What my problem is that what are we doing to maximize Drake May's talents? And I'm sorry, but Kayshon Boutte, Romeo Dobbs, Kyle Williams, Pop Douglas, Mac Hollins, and Efton Chisholm III aren't exactly maximizing Drake May's talents. And oh, by the way, you still don't have a tight end replacement for Austin Hooper, who gave you pretty valuable tight end 2 role, and I don't think Jack Westover is the answer. So what are you doing at tight end? I mean, is it just, we're hitting the draft at this point? I don't know. But it's just from the offensive standpoint, I don't see the vision as of right now, which I'm recording at 10:10 p.m. after listening to a little bit of the Savage Boston podcast. And you know what? I figure, you know what? It's about time, good a time as any, to be talking about this. And don't worry, Savage, Dan, I'm sure I'll have him on the pod eventually. You won't just have to listen to me drone on and on about how the Patriots are not doing the most that they can for their superstar quarterback, the runner-up MVP, and so on and so forth. Now, I do want to say, I missed being able to talk about the team all last season. And the way that, I will say, just going back for a second, the way the team performed was out of this world. The way they won their playoff games, just tremendous. Defensive effort, for the most part, obviously the Broncos game was a different story, but for the most part, made plays when you had to on offense. And that Super Bowl was just the biggest letdown I've probably ever experienced in my life, aside from the 96 Super Bowl. And it just opened my eyes to the holes that this team has, and right up front is where one of those holes is, and I think they did a decent job of filling one of those holes, which is at left guard, with the signing of AVT, Elijah Vera Tucker. 3 years, $42 million. Make no mistake that Vera Tucker is a speculative asset at best. He spent all of last season, the better part of the 24 season, injured. But the Patriots probably feel that their strength and conditioning and medical teams are a cut above the Jets, and I would tend to agree. So maybe they feel like they can keep him healthy, get him on a program that'll, really help with the soft tissue injuries, because as we know, Vrabel does not like guys with soft tissue stuff. So I think that Vera Tucker, if he's playing at his best, is an excellent get, especially for the price that they're paying. That's number one. Obviously, Will Campbell has to get better, has to get healthier. I still am firmly of the belief that the only reason that Will Campbell performed the way he did was because his knee was not 100%, and the Patriots did not do their team a service and allowed Will Campbell to play. I get it. Guy wants to tough it out, show his teammates he cares. I understand all of that. What I don't understand is it was clearly showing up on tape. He wasn't able to push off an anchor properly. He was getting bulldozed because he just had no strength in his lower body. That's a story for a different day, and we'll get to it, but I'm glad at least that we won't have two rookies together, and you'll have Vera Tucker at the left guard spot. And I think that's a really positive signing for this team. Another one that initially I was like, that's it, is Reggie Gilliam, the fullback for the Bills. I understand we need a fullback, especially in the red zone. It was so demoralizing when you can't get a friggin' yard. And how many drives stalled at the 1 yard line last year? That's just taking points off the board. And I do think that Reggie Gilliam will really help with that. I mean, he certainly helped the Bills, especially, James Cook, Ray Davis really break some of those runs open with his ability to get to the second level. It's a good signing. Again, 30,000-foot view, it makes sense for what the Patriots want to do. They want to be able to get the run game going to open up the play-action pass game, which is where Drake shines, especially if he's able to get some receivers who are able to get open down the field, deep, uncover quickly, things of that nature. That's where, Drake and his play-action ability, I think, will really shine. Gilliam will help with that. From a blocking perspective, AVS will help with that from a blocking perspective. But in terms of the run game, Gilliam, he's a road grader. He'll get up to the second level. He'll get into the line of scrimmage, create some space for Ramondre to do his thing. Turn a 1 yard gain into a 7 yard gain, and hopefully Travion gets his eyes out of his ass and can turn a 1 yard gain into a touchdown. Thanks to, maybe a hole that Gilliam opens up for him. So I think from a team building perspective, what you want to do on offense, Gilliam makes a lot of sense. Admittedly, I wasn't too happy with the signing at the time, but as time has gone on, I think that it's a really good one. I'm not going to touch on all these again. There hasn't been many, but the last one is Draymond Jones. I don't really have any strong opinions on Draymond Jones. He's clearly a Caleb Chason replacement or a Caleb Chason addition if Caleb does decide, and I hope he decides to come back to the Patriots. But again, I don't see the Patriots overextending for KC. It's going to be at their price. What they probably told him was, hey, go out, get offers, and come back to us. And the fact that he hasn't signed with a team yet tells me that maybe his market is not as strong as him and his agent were hoping it was. And maybe that bodes well for the Patriots. So we'll see on that. There's more to come. But that's the free agent stuff. That's the Max Crosby of it all. If you want my opinion on Max Crosby for the Patriots, I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. I'm sorry. The amount of draft capital that the Ravens, tentatively gave away to the Raiders, plus the being, willing to pay that contract, they formed their entire offseason around this one piece, which is the acquisition of Max Crosby. They thought that the acquisition of Max Crosby was worth the 2 first-round picks that they gave up to take their defense over the edge. And now they had to make a business decision based on the fact that Crosby is, not healthy right now, or maybe won't be healthy for the beginning of the season. They made a decision to move off of it. And yeah, there's an organizational history of doing that to players. It's not just Max Crosby that it's happened to, it's others. But when you look at it, the amount of capital that they were willing to invest, the amount of cap space they were willing to invest to back out of it, it's a massive failure. It has to be all due to how Crosby's physical came out. The knees specifically, I think the meniscus tear was worse than Max let on, was about as bad as the Raiders let on, and I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. I just would not do it. You could tell me you could, get him for a 7th-round pick, and yeah, okay, I'll do it for a 7th, but if you're telling me there's any, real appreciable draft assets that I would have to give up in order to acquire Max Crosby, I'm not doing it. The same thing with A.J. Brown at this point. Like, I know I touched on it earlier in the pod, but number one, I don't see it getting done. I just feel like, again, the Pats aren't going to overextend, but I feel that even giving up a first-round pick at this point would be a futile effort. Now, I understand that, immediately makes the Patriots better, but I would think that a 2nd and a 5th would probably be the price that he ends up going for, and that's a price that I'd be willing to pay if I'm Elliott Wolf, Mike Vrabel, Ryan Cowden, whoever is making the decisions. I know I was clowning Elliott Wolf yesterday, but it's clearly, the Vrabel show with Wolf and Cowden kind of working together to make these decisions. Yeah, so if it's a 2nd and a 5th, I'm all in on A.J. Brown. I obviously want A.J. Brown, but I would prefer the Pats to maybe look at a Chris Olave. I know I talked about Chris Olave a lot on Twitter during the season, and there was real interest there from the Pats to trade for Olave. And I don't think that interest has waned at all. If anything, I think it's gone up based on how the receiver market has shaken out in free agency and their inability to trade for A.J. Brown. So that's just my opinion on that one. I think Chris Olave would give you probably, again, 80% of what A.J. Brown could give you. I think he's a really talented player. He's got the red zone potential. He's got the long speed. He's just a great player. And yeah, you can say, oh, he's got the concussion history, blah, 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 blah. I don't care too much about the concussion history, just because if you look at how he played last season, he was actually a much better player and was able to protect himself a lot more. So yeah, that's where I am in terms of free agency, the trade market, things of that nature. Just before I recorded this, your boy Ricky Scoops was all over with the and look at that. Ricky has deleted his account again. But he was all over a safety from the Colts whose name is now escaping me because, of course, I am ill-prepared to do this and I'm just doing this on the fly. But it was a Colts safety, guy who was up and coming. I would love him on the team if he were to truly sign. Now, here's what you can expect from me going forward. As of right now, we're not going to be doing a weekly podcast just because life is still lifing pretty hard, but I enjoy this. I hope you enjoy it, and please let me know if you do. Like, subscribe, all that BS that they always ask you. It feels good to be able to talk to you fine folks again and let you know what the thoughts are, what I may or may not be hearing. And by the way, I ain't hearing fucking much. They're locked down tighter than a tick's asshole over there. When Vrabel said last year that there's a lot of rats in that building, I think those rats have been expelled. So the information is fleeting, it's few and far between, whatever you want to call it. And for the people who say, "Oh, you don't have any sources," I don't. You can think what you want. I'm done trying to defend that and defend. I hate to call it my record, but defend who I am, what I do. I understand I'm a faceless, nameless weirdo on the internet with a cartoon avatar who freaks out every time the Patriots aren't doing well. It's who I am, baby. Okay, you're just gonna have to deal with it. But back to my original point, and apologies for the tangents. They are quite frequent as of late. Not going to be an every week thing. I think once we start to get into training camp, become more frequent, definitely going to have some guests on to talk about the Patriots, talk about where they land. Probably going to do a free agency wrap up. Maybe I'll do it next week. Maybe I'll try to get a guest on who can kind of talk about everything. Not going to promise that, but who knows. And then my goal is, once the season starts, to be recording every week, talking about the Patriots. Some background. I'm going to be moving into a new house here pretty soon, so I'm going to be able to not upgrade, but better organize myself in terms of my office, my recording area. And, so big things coming from myself, big things coming from the Patriots. And I hope you stick along. I hope you enjoy the ride. But, for myself, Pats Pro, this has been the Pats Pro Podcast, otherwise known as the Triple P. I'll talk to you later.